right, so what I'm going to do today is I am going to go over what we discussed in the X Spaces. I do these spaces once a week, every week at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. And there's a cool little tool called Lurky that watches us. We're actually a syndicated show on Lurky here. A lot of crypto stuff and also AI stuff. Anyways, let's talk about what we went over. First of all, want to appreciate speakers who came on the show. Ash, good friend of mine. Sharon, Doc Nunu, who's over in the UK. She's actually a doctor. Shaxi, and there's a couple of new people that I don't know so well. But anyways, I'm going to go through what we talked about and kind of show you a little bit more in depth what we were talking about, because it's audio. Sometimes you can't, get the full gist of things. Anyways, it's Friday now. Before I go into that, just wanted to let you know, if you're running OpenClaw, they just released 26.423 that allows you to use the new OpenAI 5.5. Go check that out. General AI tech news, we were talking about that. What we were talking about here was the fact that SpaceX is thinking about buying Cursor. That is freaking trippy.
You see, SpaceX is going to buy Cursor? That's kind of crazy. That's not like something that was like not on my bingo card for 2026. Just like, what? What was that?
In other news, Apple's new CEO, he's actually in the tech department. So I'm actually really excited about that. Tim Cook did a good thing. He did a good job. But for me, he didn't have quite the charisma Steve had. As you guys know, I used to work for Apple. I was a genius. Before that, actually, way, way, way back when, I was a tech for Apple down in New Zealand. And then I became a service manager down there. So we were talking about the future of AI and the business impact. Let's actually go over here. I think I know which ones. Yeah, is Doc Nunu. She's kind of been reluctant about moving into AI. She's a doctor, like a GP, right? As far as I understand. And she's over in the UK. And I just want to, I don't think I mentioned it then, because I actually found the information a couple of days later. Back, I think it was like 2020. Was when computer vision came along, right? And they were like, oh, all of the people are going to be out of a job, and now there's more jobs than there ever has been, right? Because these are just tools that help you do your job better. And they don't take away your job.
And we now have a shortage of radiologists in the world, right?
Okay, so this is where he's talking about computer vision.
Completely superhuman. Every radiology platform and package today is driven by AI. And yet, the number of radiologists grew. So the question is why? And we now have a shortage of radiologists in the world. And so, one, the alarmist warning went too far and it scared people from doing this profession that is so important to society. And so it did harm. Now, why was it wrong? The reason why is because the purpose of a radiologist, the purpose is to diagnose disease and help patients and doctors diagnose disease. And because we're able to study scans so much faster now, you could study more scans, you could diagnose better, you could inpatient faster, you can see people more, you have more patients in the hospital, you need more radiologists. I mean, the amazing thing is, it's so obvious this was going to happen.
So, Shaxi, my friend, was saying that future of AI lies in helping companies set up AI. Absolutely. And he's thinking about doing customer support, right? to automate tasks and then later escalate it to a human. And what's really important, what I said to him, was that the AI have a really good context of the company. And this is how AI slop starts, right? It's when people don't give AI enough context, and I compare it to giving a 14-year-old a Ferrari, right? And I actually wrote an article about it. There it is. OpenClaw is not a tool, it's an operating system. And this is supposed to be a 14-year-old AI trying to drive a Ferrari. So that's where that came in. So now let's go back here and see the next thing that we were talking about. This is where a new person came in. This URVII06 was wanting to understand the difference between general AI and agentic AI. So yeah, that was definitely a good thing to bring up.
But the agentic part is when I have it spin up a new agent, and then that agent goes and builds the stuff on the website, right? And I don't have to do that. It goes and does it itself. And so, like before, when you were using AI, you would talk to it and it would give you stuff, and then you would like cut it and then you would paste it, right? That's kind of the old fashioned, if we can say that. Seriously, it's freaking crazy. That's kind of like the old fashioned AI, right? But agentic AI is when it just goes and you're like, oh yeah, that's good. Now send it. Now do it, right?
Oh, and my friend Ash, he vibe coded a little cool game for his Yuki's program. And if you're in crypto and you're trying to build your social media following, definitely go and follow It's Ash on X and look into his new Yuki's stuff, because he's doing a lot of really great things, but he was just messing around with this little game. That was kind of cool. And then the next thing we talked about was that Ka, my OpenClaw, she started learning on her own. And I was just, I couldn't believe that she had taken what I use in my business and started applying it all by herself. I did not ask her to. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. So she made this competitor known. But the fact that she started using object type is really interesting, because if I go over here, right, you'll see I have object types for conversations, I have object types for people, opportunities, projects. And so she just thought all by herself that I should make a object type for competitor. I'm going to get rid of note because I don't want that on there. But I think that that's great. And I was so impressed by it. I actually made a little video inside of our school here where I'm talking about how proud I am of her. All right, so I got distracted from finishing up this video, and so here we go. Now let's talk about Cloudflare and scalability. I am building my website with my OpenClaw on Mdash. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've always had a problem with WordPress breaking constantly because of the plugins, right? And the fact that those plugins have such a bad security issue with them. So I actually moved to Webflow a long time ago. And as much as I like Webflow, honestly, I don't want to build my own website. I never really did, right? But as a solar entrepreneur, I had to. And so I ended up learning Webflow, which I totally appreciate. In hindsight, it's going to help me here. Now that we have our OpenClaw and everything that's available to us, we no longer have to actually build the websites ourselves. So that's actually another course that I have in my school, is I am taking you through the whole process as I actually build my website on Mdash. And then Cloudflare came out with their email for agents, right? And so I'm like, okay, so we can have the website and we can have the email. And then I started looking into, could we actually run OpenClaw on Cloudflare? So we have everything running on the same platform. And it would allow for scalability. That's what we were talking about here, is, not just the website itself, but actually moving on up to putting my OpenClaw up there, and for my clients especially, because then it puts their OpenClaw in a secure environment. With the Cloudflare workers, we can actually do that these days. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be interesting. All right, so OpenClaw, yes. Oh, we talked about the way that I have my OpenClaw set up. I think I talk about this all the time, but I can't really stress this enough about the way that I have it set up and why I have it set up the way that I do. So in my school, there is a free lesson on how to actually set up your OpenClaw on a Mac, on your Daily Driver Mini, but you do it in a separate user. And the reason you do that, as opposed to using something like Docker, right, is you can actually get around Docker pretty easily, especially if you have any technical knowledge. So it's much better, and it opens up. Like, if you give your Docker access to all the files on your user, it basically opens you up. You might as well have just put it on your user, right? Whereas when you're actually running it from the macOS file system as a separate user, and especially when you take away admin capability from that user, then it's completely contained in its own little world there. And the worst thing it can do is blow itself up. We just wipe that user and start again, right? It's not like it's affecting any of your personal stuff. So, or even better, if you have a machine you can run it on, you can definitely do it that way. But I would even still actually set up a separate user, or set it up as a non-admin, right? So I run mine behind Tailscale, and that's for my entire machine. I have Firewall running on my machine, and I have something called Little Snitch, which is a tool for the Macintosh that allows you to find anything that is calling home. So those things are really important. Again, you can learn more about them in that. Why don't I just show it to you? It is in this one, OpenClaw on a Mac Basics, and that's at our free level. So anybody can do that. There's a great thing in there about, I'll actually show you what's in there, how to install OpenClaw on a Mac. Like, you can basically do anything that you can do on your Mac. So you know how all of those files in your downloads folder or on your desktop folder, they just they pile up, right? Well, I used to use a thing called Hazelsoft that used to watch those files, those folders actually, and then after 2 weeks it would check them out. I'm like, could I get my OpenClaw to do that? And absolutely it can. So watch that if you want to learn how to do that. 1Password on the OpenClaw definitely a good idea because OpenClaw has a bad habit of kind of like throwing API keys all over the place, and then they keep changing stuff. And it's just a better idea. I've actually been using 1Password with my clients I've been consulting independently now for 24 years. I've had 2 billionaire clients that I've worked with. I've had other very wealthy clients who gave me access to things they never should have given me access to. And I was like, okay, we're going to stop that right now. You are going to install 1Password. We are going to change that. I never want to have access to that stuff. And please don't ever give access to your passwords to other people. And then how to install Obsidian. So installing Obsidian on your machine is great. Yeah, whatever. Okay? Like a lot of people do that. And everybody talks about building a second brain with Obsidian and integrating it with their OpenClaw, but they don't actually integrate it with their OpenClaw. Like, if you're going to actually integrate it with OpenClaw, do so. And the way you do that is by installing it on top of the workspace folder in your OpenClaw. And what that allows you to do, and I'll just show you real quick here, that allows you to, this is the workspace folder of Obsidian, right? And I'll actually show you up here, workspace. So if we go out here, and if I hold this down, you'll see it's actually in my OpenClaw workspace, right? And so the reason you do that is because when you're working back and forth, there's a lot of times I will tell Ka, and I think I actually just did this here recently, I get her to modify things, right? And I want to be able to see, did she mess anything up? Because occasionally she definitely does, right? And especially when I'm like a power user, right? So I'm pushing the system as much as I possibly can. But if I'm the Tony Stark, I want to know what's going on, right? Like, I want to know what we are creating here together. And by having access to the agents file and, the user file, the soul file, and everything that we have here inside of one place where we work on it together. I'm actually working on how to, you'll notice I have mine set up for user and business here. So I'm actually working on setting it up for multi-user businesses as well, right? So I am an instance of a user. And then if we were working in a business and there were multiple users, we would just sync certain files up to the primary Obsidian vault. But anyways, that's getting a little bit, connecting Claude and OpenClaw and Obsidian. That is the other thing too, is that there are people that are more comfortable with Claude, right? They want to be kind of in a more secure environment. But if I'm working with them and I need the extra power of OpenClaw, because maybe we want to do some stuff outside of the Claude little environment, right? Like we want to use some other LLMs, or we have some stuff that is super private, like when I'm working with a law office or something like that. We don't want that information leaving our world, right? So there is a time when we can have Claude running things on top of that workspace for specific users, right? Same thing. So you can learn how to do that there too. Okay, let's go back to what I was... Okay, so I talked all about that course, all that fun stuff. That's a free course, by the way. So, because I want to give that to you because, first of all, I'm an Apple Certified Technical Coordinator, used to be a genius. I understand fundamentally how to set this up securely on a Mac, right? I want to give that to you guys because I want you doing that. I want the systems that you create to be secure. I want them working a long time. But do this first, please. That's why I gave that to you. It's really important to me. Okay, so CRM outreach. We were talking about the executive loop system here. Executive loop system, yes. Okay, let's talk about those 3 discussions and the CRM and all of that fun stuff. So, the executive loop system that I kind of specialize in, and this has really come about not just because of AI, right? But it's really come about because of the things that I saw in companies. I've worked with over 300 companies, again, over 24 years, right? And I saw where there were issues, where things would fall down. And so I started to build my whole system. And there's this one piece of it that I call the executive loop. But today, let's talk about the executive loop. I'm going to pull up a image so it's easier for you to follow than talking about it here. So we're at my X profile, and if you go to articles here, there's probably going to be more by the time you actually watch this. This is a good executive loop article, but the original article is actually down here. And let's actually bring this up, and I'll talk you through it real quick. So basically, in a normal business, the time frame between when information happens in the company and when the CEO actually gets it is basically about 2 weeks, right? On average. It can be faster for a smaller company and slower for a larger company, right? My kind of sweet spot working with clients is from 0 employees up to about 30. I did have a large company, about 50 employees, but really my sweet spot's about 0 to 30, right? And so you have your direct reports, your executive assistants, your strategy teams. They all filter information into you, but it is definitely filtered, right? And filtered by their lens, whatever lens that may be, and then we have our leg, right? And so the nice thing is that with the AI, we can determine exactly how we want things filtered and synthesized, right? But it can also happen almost on a real-time basis rather than it being, way behind. We can have it so freaking fast. I asked it to do an intelligence run on my system on a document that I had brought in. It was like a 33-page PDF, right? And normally it takes a few seconds before it spits the intelligence back. But this was, I gave it to it and it spit it back like that. I was like, oh, holy man. Whoa, that was fast. So when I say like almost instantaneous, these days it's getting almost instantaneous. Pretty crazy. So what tech stack do you need to do this? Obviously you need OpenClaw or Claude or AirMaze or whatever, harness you actually want to use. Like I said, I prefer OpenClaw just because it gives me a lot more power and control, and the fact that it's open source. Here, one of the reasons that Unix is such a very, very strong operating system, right, is because it was open source at its core. And then Apple basically just wrapped Mac OS X. Apple wrapped Unix, right? But what that means is that whenever that Unix undercore is modified by all of the people that update Unix, it gets better and it gets better and it gets better and it gets better, therefore making OS X better and better and better, right? And it's the same with OpenClaw. You've got all of these people maintaining OpenClaw now, and huge companies and governments now Like the UAE yesterday, they just said that they're going to run everything on OpenClaw and with agentic systems. So you've got these massive companies, governments, everything. So you can guarantee that that's going to be updated, right? Whereas if you're in a environment like Claude, right? And I'm not really like pouncing on Claude, I'm just giving you the reality of things. You could have, for instance, a government, like the United States, for instance, say that they have a monopoly or something, right? And that makes them vulnerable because they are one thing, right? And so that's my only thing about going with one that kind of freaks me out a little bit, right? So be that as it may, that's why I decided to go with OpenClaw. Obsidian, why did I decide to go with Obsidian? It's actually turning out to be more compatible and much better to work with LLMs than even a RAG system, right? Because the more structure you give an LLM, it's like it's kind of like, I'll give you a perfect example of this, right? So like an MCP, a lot of people don't know this either. An MCP is not very good compared to a CLI. And the reason behind that is that MCPs were made so that agents could learn how to use the UIs of systems, right? And so it's got to tell the agent all of this information about the UI of the system before you even do anything, right? And so it loads up your context, uses a freaking ton of tokens before you actually can get anything done. Whereas if you use a CLI, command line interface, that is built so that it can like talk right to the system without having a UI. Like there's no UI there. It's a command line, no UI. So much faster. And it's the same thing with Obsidian. Obsidian allows you to make both structured data with its new capability of doing bases, right? And you do it in something called the front matter and the YAML, but don't worry about that. It's just a technical thing. You just need to understand that the LLM can talk to it much easier because it understands Markdown totally quickly. And humans understand Markdown. So it's better for both the humans and the LLM to be able to actually, talk to each other. So that's why we want to use that. And your persistent memory and structured data is basically your Obsidian, right? And so let's talk about that executive loop. So first of all, you have the context, right? And this is where I don't know how much you've actually used us, right? But you've probably at some point in time put a massive prompt into your ChatGPT, your Claude, your whatever you're using to give it context, right? And it's context about what you're trying to do. Wonderful, right? Very limited. And then, people were trying to put context in a memory file. Better, but still very limited, right? So, by putting an Obsidian vault in there, you can build a whole world, a whole brain, a whole company brain with multiple users, a very large brain. You can make a little brain or a very large brain, right? And give it all the context of your business. And that's what MyKa has. So she understands my company goals, the constraints, active projects, anybody that's on the team, right? Issues, decisions, risks in the company, everything that's going on. She has that whole context. So when I ask her a question, she's not asking me stupid questions back. She actually understands everything that's going on, right? So that's number one, the context. Number two is the decision. So like when you're making decisions, and I'll give you a example of this. So let's say that in the past, and this happens in so many businesses, you've had a vendor that you were working with and that vendor is no longer performing, but now we don't know why we're using that vendor, what the benefits were of that vendor. That person who got that vendor is now no longer with the company. We don't know the alternative companies that we were talking with, right? So we lose all of that information around the decisions that were made. And that is a beautiful part of this system, is that we write all of our decisions into the system. Now, what it's talking about here is the yes man. So a LLM can quite often be sycophantish, right? Like it can tell you what you want to hear. But you can set the system up so that it is not a yes man, right? Even better than your employees that work with you, because your employees don't want to make you unhappy, right? But you can actually get your LLM or the mind behind your agent to actually talk to you properly and tell you, yes, this is a good idea, no, this is a bad idea. And based on context. Now we're talking about execution. And this is where it's different from just talking with chatbot, right? I was telling you about my website, right? I don't make the website at all. I just tell Ka what I need on the website, right? And we go back and forth and we talk it and we discuss it, just like having a very intelligent assistant who I talk to, who understands the context of my business and everything that we're doing. I can say, yeah, go do that, right? Go update the CRM. Go follow up with that lead. Publish this content. I like that. I'm in support of that, right? I have approved you to go and do those things. That is the execution part of an agentic system, right? And then we go into the feedback in actually looking. We had the context, we made the decision, we executed. Now, let's look at it and go, is that system working? What we just did on that loop, did that work? How can we get better? Let's identify failures so that we can fix the system and we can run faster and faster and faster, right? So that's the thing with a full operator loop like this, is that you get better context, right? You get faster decisions, you get greater leverage by understanding what knobs to turn, right? In order to get the system to run faster, more efficiently, less cost, all of that, right? You've got that continuous loop going on. So that is what we were talking about with the executive loop there, right? And specifically here, we were talking about how I was having it update, my CRM. We had a really good Facebook post, and we had about 50 replies, and then I had Ka go in there and create all of the people and scrape all of the information so that I knew everything about them that I could see, right? And then follow up with them, right? And create videos, personalized videos for them with HeyGen, and we did all of that inside of OpenClaw, right? But again, you can't do that without having that executive loop kind of system so that it understands the context of everything, right? And so many people were doing these as pieces, but they were never doing them holistically, right? And that's really what I teach, is that whole holistic system when you're using an agentic system properly, at least properly according to my world. So that is what we talked about. Now let's go over here. Okay, So the next thing we talked about was the system that I set up inside of Ka for tracking the mistakes that she made. Now, granted, she makes a lot less mistakes now that she's got 5.5 OpenAI. Granted, she makes a lot less mistakes now that she's running OpenAI 5.5. By tracking your mistakes, you can get better. So whenever she made a mistake, we had her actually go in there and track that mistake. I had her doing that for about a week or two. And then I saw Gary Tan's system, and then we actually put that into a loop as well. So that now those mistakes are looked at constantly, and when patterns start to develop, then we create systems for self-healing so that it can get better and better. And that's one of the things that Hermes does really well, right? And then one of our speakers asked about how he was handling customer support with Claude. And he was having a problem with it, just kind of like regurgitating answers.
So what I did realize, what I found though, was when I got Claude to kind of set things up and things along those lines, is it was, instead of adjusting, it was just regurgitating the old answers. And my hope was that I could set it up in a way where it can organically use the history.
Right. So so here's what you're losing, right? And what exactly you're running into is that right now you come into an instance of Claude, right? It gets spun up and it doesn't know who the hell you are, right? Or what the hell it's doing. It doesn't know that, right? And so you're pointing it at that data, but it hasn't really had time to create context from that data, right? And so that's why putting an Obsidian Vault into this system would help you.
Like, it had the context of what was in the past, but it didn't have the whole context like we can actually build with Obsidian and the whole executive loop. And so that's why you get that kind of stupid regurgitating rather than actually having an intelligent system be able to look at this customer. What has this customer said in the past? What has been their problem in the past? And what are the issues the customer's talking about? Now we can look at all of the issues that the company has ever had with regards to this, and then we can put that together and then respond, right? You're going to have a much more intellectual response than a AI slop response in that scenario, right? The more context you can give your AI, the better it's going to be able to help you. And it's much better than automated systems. Like, oh my God, way better than automated systems. All right, so what else did we talk about this day? Personalized outreach. Yeah, so that was actually really fun. What we were doing there was I set up the HeyGen CLI. And so now when I respond to people, I make little videos of me responding to them. Hang tight, I'll go grab you one. Okay, here. So let's have a look at this one here.
Hey Tim, just wanted to quickly follow up since you commented Loop on my post. Ka, my OpenClaw, made this short video for you. If you jump into the school, you'll find the free Executive Loop article in the classroom under Articles. And if you want to learn more about the Executive Loop program starting May 1st, the second video on the About page walks through it. If you have any questions, just let me know. Happy to help.
I just had Ka create the follow-up video, and we have a much higher response rate, about a 66% response rate when we do personalized videos like that, right? But again, they're not just stupid videos that don't have the context. They have the full context. We knew that guy was Tim. We knew exactly which, post that he commented on, and we know what he commented. And we gave him information about where that information was available inside of our system. So that is a much better response than just, giving him some AI slop, right? So I think we're getting close to the end here. What else? Oh, we talk about data cleaning. Oh, yeah. This was really interesting, actually. So what I did here was I imported, so I was, for those of you who don't know, like, my history, right? I was a world-leading software implementer for Daylight for 10 years, right? I had a company called MacAngel. After I left Apple, as working for them as Genius. And then I went on to, have my MacAngel company. And that's where I started using Daylight for myself. And I started doing videos. I started doing webinars. And then I started selling those webinars. And, that's how I became the world leader. I also did a lot of really good SEO stuff. That was one way that I got up, my competition used to call me. And they actually hired two of my competition hired me to teach them SEO because they were so frustrated, especially this one guy. He was the master partner for Citrix. Actually, after I did Daylight, I did Podio Citrix, right? I was one of their preferred Podio partners, one of 18 in the world for a while. And so he calls me up and he's all frustrated that whenever he types in Podio, my site comes up, and he's in Australia, and he's the master partner for Podio in Australia, and he was so frustrated by that. So he hired me to teach him SEO. So I have a large following, right, of people that know me from that time. And so now I'm going back to them and telling them, that I'm now helping with agentic systems. And so I had to bring in 5,000 people from LinkedIn, right? And working with Ka, oh my God, it was so nice because she could learn the exceptions, right? And I'll give you an example. So somebody's on my list, but they're labeled as unaware, but they follow me on LinkedIn. Well, they're not unaware if they follow me on LinkedIn, if they're connected to me on LinkedIn, right? But all I had to do was teach her that once, and then she knew that. So, that's just wonderful. And then now I've got my system in so that we can start sending emails and stuff like that, right? And not a lot of emails. I just want you to know it's possible to use your OpenClaw to send cold emails. You can absolutely do that, and there are ways of doing that. Again, all of this stuff is or will be inside of the premium area of my school. So that's enough about that. These guys, I can't remember his name now, but anyways, this guy, they had been using Clay, right? And Clay was costing them $4,000 a month to get the data, capture the data, right? But now with OpenClaw, you can actually not have to do that. Unfortunately, a lot of SaaS is going to go by the wayside, and it is going to go by the wayside by people like myself building it for themselves and then also building it for other people. But I tell you, honestly, having an OpenClaw as a solo entrepreneur is totally a superpower. All of the SaaS stuff, I don't use a CRM anymore. I built my CRM inside of Obsidian, and it works better than any CRM I have ever had because it's very, very customized to me and how I work. And I have my OpenClaw to manage the whole system. She does all the data entry. I just tell her what I want and she goes and does it. But me, I'm like the strategist, right? I understand how everything fits together, and then I just tell her to go and do that, right? And if you don't understand how all of this stuff fits together, don't worry about it. Go join my school, join the premium program. You will learn a heck of a lot. And if you want like more personal help, you can jump into my VIP program. I only take about 10 of those right now because we're just ramping up this system. And this is where we like meet one-on-one, and you have access to me on WhatsApp, and we can talk a lot more. So that is the end of our call for the 22nd, and it was called Agentic AI. What are you building with it? Again, thanks for all of the speakers for coming on. I can't wait for the people coming on next week and finding out what everybody is doing, what questions everybody has. So if this kind of stuff interests you, follow me on X, Marnie Melrose. You can see me right there. Or jump into my school. Lots of free stuff there. Jump into premium if you want to actually get going, start working, and love to see you. Bye.